Welcome to Accessibilities with Dr. Dee and Marquis. Hi, I'm Dr. Dee Giannetti, and this is my co-host and service dog, Marquis. Marquis, high five. Attaboy. Marquis, say hi. Attaboy. And who's our special guest today? Our guest is Bill Porter. Okay, you can lay down. Thank you. So as you know, this is a show celebrating the everyday lives of people with disabilities. There's a saying, if you see it, you can be it. But there's a big problem out there. There are not many people with disabilities visible on the screen. I'm hoping that viewers watching this show may see people and say, wow, I have that disability. And if he can do that or she can do that, maybe I can do that too. And I'm also hoping that people in the general population will get to know people with disabilities. And we would also like to highlight organizations and businesses and town departments to show their reasonable accommodations for equal access to their products and services. I promote disability identity as a culture of pride and strength, not pity and shame. I see disability as just another way of moving through the world, just different modes of functioning. Through the lens of disability culture, life with a disability is a way of life, neither tragic nor devalued. And now I'd like to introduce you to my special guest today, Bill Porter.
Hello, thank you so much for having me today.
It's nice to have you. Bill is a visual artist and educator. Bill has an MFA in visual arts and a BFA in animation with a minor in film studies. Bill is also an adjunct professor in animation and motion media at Leslie Art and Design. Bill has had many exhibitions and publications of his work and is currently on display in a gallery and available for purchase. Bill also happens to be a person with a disability. Bill is legally blind. So welcome, Bill.
Thank you, yes.
So I just want to start out with, I was looking on your website and I saw, I pulled out a quote that you have there that I think is phenomenal. And what you said is, working with house paint, book pages, and reclaimed wood, I recontextualize forms culled from the space of memory, fostering dialogue between images, text, and materials. That is so intriguing.
Thank you. Yes. So you want? Yeah. Well, you know, my work is. It's really, once I got my MFA 6 years ago, I started on this journey of really exploring and doing an art practice that's very personal. Before that, I had done a lot of commercial work as an artist. So this work really touches back to iconography from my childhood as far as imagery. The materials are really important because my father was a house painter growing up. So, you know, my understanding of painting is not the more traditional one of oil and canvas. And so I never got into painting until recently because it just didn't speak to me. But once I found that, you know, working with house paint and be able to scratch the surface and layer, and I actually have a lot of collage elements to my work as well. And so that seemed to be a medium where I could really express the complex ideas that I wanted to explore through my work.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic. So you want to tell us about some of your art pieces?
Sure. Most of my paintings are, I work with reclaimed materials, like mostly all wood is my backdrop. I work with shingles, it's reclaimed doors and fencing materials, even from my own house. Typically, if I can get it myself, it's I do that. So it's scrounging those materials. And then I work with like acrylic house paint, as well as I take pages from books and I take other sources of material that sort of speak to the ideas I'm thinking about. And so I really think about ideas of influence of storytelling. So there is a narrative element to the work that I'm really trying to explore. So I look through thoughts and things that related to influences from my childhood mostly. So there's images of like the comics and cartoons that influenced me to be an artist, in conjunctions with sort of ideas of how, as a child, you're taught like about the world. You know, when you have those questions about where do I come from, and what's the meaning of life, or whatever it may be, the answers I got, whether it be through religion or television or whatever it may be, it's exploring those influences and then bringing it all into a painting and sort of exploring that idea further and
That's
how that might be.
awesome.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of meaning in your artwork.
Well, you know, I like to leave the work to be open, certainly to the viewer to have their own interpretation of it. I mean, it's a very personal to me, and I find that living with the work, I tend to learn more about it after I've made it sometimes, like what, because sometimes I don't know why I'm making a certain choice, and then it comes to me later. And so I find that to be interesting. And I know that, you know, some of the imagery that I use in my work and the elements, the iconography that I, you know, cull is from very pop culture elements and things that are familiar to people. So they're going to have their own experience with the work. And I actually enjoy seeing people react to it in that way and see what they pull from it. So, and that's sort of the idea, not to be very direct about what I'm trying to explore through the work, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And so you've had quite a few exhibitions, and you're in a gallery right now?
Yes, I'm represented by Coastal Contemporary Gallery. It's based out of Newport, Rhode Island. Yeah.
And if people wanted to view your work, could they see it online? Or?
Yes, you can see it. My website is billaporter.com, and Coastal Contemporary Gallery, I believe .com as well, but it's linked off my website. And there's some, I believe I'll be in an exhibition next month, more to come. And I certainly have exhibited there a lot in the past as well. This past year, though, with COVID and all, I haven't been showing as much as I had in the past. I was in a lot of shows the prior year, but it's been a very different year. Lockdown with a lot of other things, teaching online and amongst other stuff that I've been working on.
Yeah, yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your teaching?
Well, I'm an adjunct professor of animation and motion media, so I teach at Leslie Art and Design out of Cambridge. Right now we're doing it online, which is a really unique experience trying to teach that way. But before that, it was on campus teaching students. I mostly teach courses, sophomore courses currently, and the course I teach, Sophomore Seminar 1 and 2, is really two-part 1-year experience where I start students off with from seed to a final animated film. So it's their first way through of making a full 1 minute or longer animated short. So I really enjoy the whole process of, again, with my work. I was talking about my own work with storytelling. I think I've worked in so many mediums. I've done photography, I've video production. I've studied so many different mediums within the animation and media. But I really enjoy the one thread I've found between all the work I've done throughout my career is that how the medium can tell a story and how you can do that. And so that's what I really focus on in my teaching, is teaching students how they can use the amazing and remarkable medium of animation, where it's pretty much boundless. How can you really take advantage of that to tell a story and use that, all the visual elements that come with it that you just can't get in other mediums. So that's what I really love about animation.
Yeah, that's
it's really
great
just a combination of all the, I love photography, I love filmmaking, I love illustration, and you can bring all that into animation. So that's what really I enjoy about teaching that. And
right.
Yeah.
How long have you been teaching?
It's been 6 years that I've been teaching in that department. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So, I know that you have an Irish heritage.
Yes.
And we talked a little bit about that. How has that influenced your work?
Well, I think greatly. I mean, part of it is when I was an undergraduate, I went to studied abroad at Byrne College of Art and Design as a semester abroad. And at that time, I just studied photography for 4 months, and I photographed the family farm, I photographed landscapes, and
so
really
this
did sort
is
of
in Ireland.
in Ireland. So I did a sort of a photographic sort of exploration of my own sort of family history there when I was there, and then some of that influences that come into my recent work, So some of the elements are certainly there of that influence. It's not all of it, certainly. I grew up in Lexington, Massachusetts, and grew up in America, so a lot of that popular culture of the Sunday comics and all those other things were as much of an influence for me in being an artist as well. But certainly the ties to Ireland are there as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And your father was a painter? But
a house painter,
different kind of painter.
Huh?
Yeah, a different kind of painter.
Yes, a different kind of paper. Yeah, totally. I know the irony there, right? I remember actually when I was in elementary school, my art teacher, who was a big influence in me trying to explore art. Before I even knew I had the retinal disorder, I knew I wanted to be an artist. And part of it was because the influence of my elementary school art teacher, who said, you might have something here, and really encouraged me and supported me. And then I told her my father, when I told her my father was a painter, I think she assumed he was an artist.
An artist.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the funny stories I remember from back then. But yeah.
So do you want to talk about what your visual disability is?
Absolutely, yeah. I have an inherited retinal disorder. It's called retinitis pigmentosa. My mother has it, my grandmother had it. So it's a dominant hereditary disease that comes through the genes. I have two siblings, they don't have it, so it's like one of those kind of 50-50 shot deals. And it affects I started noticing it when I was probably 10 years old with night blindness, so like going out at night, playing flashlight tag was not going to work for me at any age, or going out at night in the dark with my friends, or whatever it may be. I just couldn't see very well, and that was the first sign. But it really affects my field of vision. So slowly over time, throughout my life, my field of vision's been closing in and getting tighter. I also have cataracts, so there's issues with glare. So my vision really varies based on the lighting and where I'm at, whether it be outside, inside, if the light's direct, indirect. And so I'm officially became, according to the state of Massachusetts, legally blind about 2.5 years ago. And that's just because my field of vision is really narrow. So, if I go like this right now, I can't see, if I'm looking straight at you, I can't see my fingers till about there or
you
there.
lost
So
your
it's really,
vision.
like a horse with blinders on,
Yeah.
kind of really narrow field. There are little pockets and spots where I could see things, and it's not all darkness. I think there's misconceptions sometimes if somebody's blind or legal or partially blind.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand what legal blindness means.
Or even if you're completely blind, that they think it's all darkness. But I've heard from people that are completely blind that they see light or color, and so for me, my brain's trying to figure it out, so it fills it in. And I think there's still little elements of my retina working. It's just so weak of a signal that if it's a bright enough light and it's a high contrast object, I'm going to catch it. But if somebody tries to shake my hand or wave at me, I'm just not going to see it. So if I'm looking directly at something, I can do well. But aside from that, that's how I can work at it as an artist, actually. Yeah. I've been able to retain doing that kind of work because it's really just about focusing on looking at the work. So if I have to watch a film or see something like that, I'm going to sit in the back because I need it all within my field of vision, right? Being up close is not going to work. But there are ways to sort of adjust and accommodate. And so as time goes on, I have to keep making those adjustments. But I have a home studio, which has been really great. I don't have to because I can't drive anymore to get to one, and I can affect the environment, make the environment work for me. So when I'm doing my work, and it's interesting when I look back. I've always, when I was a kid, I was really into drawing really small and doing comics and illustrations and digital work, and I was always working small, and I didn't really think about the fact that maybe drawing big, when I do like this, you can't see everything on the page, so just working little elements at a time. Think back to, I was really adapting my practice to some of those things.
Isn't that amazing?
And like photography, I studied a lot of photography and taught a little bit of it when I was right out of undergrad, but with my sight going, being in the darkroom, it just was like, I can't do that. So you have to adapt as you go and make it work. But luckily there's a lot of technology that can make it work. And as far as teaching goes, that's, before I was openly about this to everyone, because, I was not, it's not something that you want to feel comfortable doing necessarily until recently. I decided I was going to do this. But before that, I was really just talking to my students.
So when you say do this, you mean telling people that
about your disability,
right.
Because it was a need-to-know basis. So I had to tell my students because I didn't want the situation where they're raising their hand and I don't see them, or I trip over their backpack because I didn't know it was on the floor. And so there's certain accommodations I needed from them in order to be able to teach.
Right.
But most people don't. Beyond that, I didn't tell people until recently. But now I'm trying to be more open about it. I think once I became legally blind, that was like the trigger moment where I was like, I'm not going to ever drive again. And actually my doctor did say, you're going to have to be an advocate, and it really triggered something in my mind. And so I've decided to try to be more open and find opportunities. So I'm grateful for this opportunity to talk about this, because I think people think when you say that you're blind or visually impaired in this case, I get so many reactions. It's either you must have, why aren't you wearing glasses, or why isn't,
right.
Why it must be something minor, or the opposite. People think you can't see anything at all. And so the reality is we all have various degrees of vision, right? There's this wide spectrum, right? And it's not just on one end or the other. We all fall somewhere in between.
Right.
And so
I found that a lot of people who are legally blind, and with a lot of other hidden disabilities too, like you said, because you can't see it, people will challenge them and say, you can see. or start doing funny things in front of you, jumping around to see if you can see, and kind of give you a hard time about that.
Well, I just started using a cane 2 years ago because commuting to Cambridge was necessary at that point, and so my biggest fear, and most of the reason I use it, it does help for navigating, but it's mostly to let other people know, because with my peripheral vision, people cut me off all the time, and they're less likely, hopefully, to do that. But my fear was like, how are people going to react? And at first, all my fears did sort of come to fruition, and once I got past that point, it was okay. But I've had people grab me and try to pull me, you need to go over here, when I knew exactly where I was going.
Yeah.
Or people shouting at me, you're faking it, you're not blind, you're not handicapped, and yelling at me at the train. You get all those reactions. But once you've seen it all, you're kind of ready for it all, I find. And so you have to be sort of an advocate and educate people. So if people have questions, I'd rather people ask questions than start grabbing me or yelling at me. I do appreciate the folks that actually ask, well, what can I help you, or what's going on? Do you mind me asking about your situation, right?
Right, so that's one of the things I've talked about here before is etiquette and talking to people with disabilities. Ask them, do you need help? Don't assume that they need help. Don't go over and push or shove or grab. Ask, do you need some help, and what is it that I can help you with?
Yeah.
But I think this is a really good topic to talk about because people challenge people, like you said.
Yeah.
You're not blind, you can see,
And I never said I was blind, that's right, come on.
Or they decide that, you must be mentally impaired as well. You can't think on your own because you can't see.
Yeah.
So it's good for people to see other people.
No, I think you make a good point. I think if they're just not used to it and not know what to do. And so they're not maybe educated on how to approach someone in that situation, or if they want to help, how they can actually do that.
Yeah, and it's great that a cane can help signify that you have a disability. It's kind of unfortunate that it's actually needed for that purpose, so you don't get trampled by people and bumped by people.
Well, when you have the peripheral vision or lack of that I have, things pop out of nowhere. And so, all you have to do is bump into a person a couple of times. And I've had those unfortunate situations where I bump into someone and they get angry or some situation, and I don't want it. It could be worse, I don't want to kick a child or hurt somebody. And I've heard friends that with the same condition talk about stories like that. And so it just had to be a point where it's like, this is in my best interest. Because, honestly, it became a point where my vision declined enough that mobility is my biggest thing, honestly.
Yeah.
When I'm at home, I know my environment. I don't need my cane. I forget I'm even visually impaired. But when I get out and go out, any crowded place, the grocery store, I love to cook. And so I also like to shop for the groceries. So when I get out there, that can be tough. And so I find anywhere I go, even when I'm on campus too. I mean, there was one situation that I was walking through the main halls of University Hall at Leslie, and there's the first floor is very poorly lit, and they have a lot of solar glare coming in from the sun during the day. And so it really messes my vision. And so I bumped right into a large pillar right in front of the security desk in front of 4 security guards.
Oh my goodness.
And they said to me, oh my God, yeah. And they were joking. I don't know if they thought I was serious, but they said, oh wow, I had too much to drink, huh? And so moments like that, it's like, okay, let me explain what's going on and tell you, because I don't want people to get the wrong idea, and people will be waving to me and I miss them, or I hate for people to think that I'm being rude or don't want to engage with them when really I have a disability.
You don't see them.
Yeah, and I've had times like that where I remember in grad school I had a professor that said, tell us something different let's go around the room and say something that no one else knows about you. So I revealed that fact at that point. I'm visually impaired. And then we had a break, and then I go into there's a break room, the lights are all off. I see her in the far corner by the window, and I thought she was the only one in the room. I start shouting to her, hey, thank you so much for doing that. All of a sudden she goes, oh, and then points over, and then I look over and there's somebody sleeping on a couch over there, but I didn't see them.
Oh.
So I'm shouting to her, and if I hadn't told her, she would have thought I was being really rude, right?
Yeah.
And so there's all these situations where you just have to, it's actually preempting that kind of misconception or misunderstanding. Yeah. Because I don't look like I'm visually impaired unless I have the cane or something. I mean, I don't even wear glasses, so I can really fool people pretty well.
I know, and when people say, well, you don't look disabled, what is disabled supposed to look like?
Yeah.
We're supposed to have a third head, or?
Well, to be honest, that is one of my fears. It's like, are people going to really, am I trying, do they really believe me? Yeah. If you see my shins, though, and you know that I bump into things constantly, and that is part of the deal.
So one of the reasons why a lot of people may not know that you have a visual impairment is you have confidence in yourself to navigate through the world, and that is great. And that's what people with disabilities need more of, is self-confidence that they can go out and they can do it.
Yeah, you can't let it hold you back, you know. And for me, I want to pursue art making, and I want to be a teacher, and all the things I want to pursue involve having to get out there and do these things. And so you have to overcome the mobility challenges and all the other things that come with it. So, but I found, the more open I have been, the more I tell people. I hear their stories. You don't, as you're saying, you don't know that a lot of people are disabled. It's amazing how many people are affected by these things, because as you looking at them, you don't know, right? And so when I tell people, all of a sudden, that's when I hear the personal stories about themselves, their family members, about what they're dealing with. And so I've had some really interesting conversations as a result of that, and got to know people on a very intimate level. So it's pretty interesting. And find that the key thing there, what I'm really getting to, is that people have been really supportive.
Yeah.
I was afraid of telling the gallery. I was afraid of telling the chair of the animation department. I was afraid of telling all these people, HR. But it was, at least in that environment here at Leslie and my family and friends, I've had a tremendous amount of support. So
that's wonderful.
To the point where I've even asked we had an event last night, actually, where we screened a film called Vision Portraits. It's a documentary.
Ask you about that. I missed it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, well, it's okay. It's a documentary film made by Rodney Evans, and he has RP as well. And he profiles 4 artists. There's 3 artists, including himself: a dancer, a writer, and a completely blind photographer. So these are all artists that are affected by loss of sight and working. And so that was a very inspirational film for me to see. And I approached Leslie and said, "Can we screen this and bring Rodney in and have a discussion?" And they were so supportive of that across the university. So it's really gotten me allowed to actually meet interesting people and have really meaningful conversations. And so last night we did that, and there was a lot of people from the Leslie community that really had a sort of reaction like, "Well, I didn't know that about vision loss," or "I didn't know, so thank you for that conversation." So I thank you for having these conversations, because this is an opportunity to really sort of share these things, because I don't normally get to talk or normally want to talk about these things, right? But I think it's important to talk about it, and when someone asks, I'm always happy to respond.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming here and taking the time to do that with us.
Thank you.
So has anything else changed with your art? What do you see in the future? Is your progression going to get worse?
Yeah, it will. If I'm fortunate to live long enough, I probably will be maybe completely blind. I don't know where it all goes, but it is a slow progression. My vision, my field will narrow. It'll go that way. But talking about inspiration and other artists, I've seen that other artists that have dealt with greater challenges and greater disabilities continue with their practice. So I will just adapt and continue on.
Yeah, that's always great when you can.
And it's such a slow progression that it's like something that I can. It's not like I know that just one day something's going to go. All of my vision will go. So I've been able to slowly adapt, and as long as I still have some central vision, I feel like I can do a lot.
Yeah. Right. So one of the things that I was thinking about is you mentioned at Leslie when you were teaching, you needed to adapt your environment with the lighting, and that was a time when someone kind of questioned your vision, whether you needed that or not.
I don't know that that's the case, but I do need to. No, it wasn't at Leslie. It was on the train. Yeah. It's just like me walking with a cane, and obviously, because if you look at your phone or you're looking at signs, I mean, if you watch me navigate, you can tell I can see if you're really paying attention. And I think someone who's familiar from seeing me on the train for a long time, they picked up on that, and one day it became a confrontation. So I tend to get that. Luckily, it's in public with strangers, not so much at school. And when I'm in the classroom, I tell the students about it. They're very supportive. And then I have my ways that it actually really doesn't you can't really even tell that I'm doing things. Like if the screen is too large, I'll look at the monitor. I'll look at my laptop, which is playing the same animation clip. And if I need I constantly tell my students, shout out loud, interrupt me, please. Don't, this whole raising your hand and waiting for me to call on you, it's not going to happen because I'm just not going to see you. So just have that sort of different sort of environment where it's just like, cut me off, please.
Yeah.
You know, because that's the best way. Because I want you to be heard. I just don't know that you want to be heard.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you're able to view all their work and everything.
Yeah. Again, with the field, and it's interesting. And one thing I actually gleaned from the film last night that was so interesting is that talking about, because he's a filmmaker, and he was talking about how, you know, when you have narrow field of vision, it's almost like you're looking in that narrow frame of that you have of the constraints of like television or film. And so as an artist, it's almost like I'm really focused on something like that at all times. And so it actually kind of, in some way it works as an artist, because I'm always looking at things like as if I'm looking at the frames of the outer frame, the aspect of a television screen, or looking at an animated film. And so, you know, as long as I'm looking further back enough, I can see it all there. And so it just sort of works in that way. So I never really thought of it until recently, that whole idea, but all these other things that are distracting you around the world as how you normally see your life, right? Or people with full vision. And then when they're looking at TV, it's just this window, right? I'm always looking through that window.
Yeah.
So that translation is just, it makes sense. Yeah.
And then you can turn your head so that you can make that window larger.
Yes, compose my shot with just my vision, right? Yeah, sure, something like that. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Are you with a commission on disability? Had you said that, or?
I do. I've served in different roles. Right. Currently, I'm part of the Diversity and Equity Inclusion Committee at Leslie Art and Design, and so we're a group that's really tasked and working hard to try to address a lot of things across the university like that. And so I've been a part of different types of groups like that in the past, but that's my main focus in that regard right now.
I think that's great. That's something that we really need right now, and a lot of people are focusing on. But I think it's great that they're including people with disabilities, because usually people with disabilities kind of get.
Well, that's always the case. That's part of the reason why I'm there, to be that voice, to be, share that perspective. Because it's not the hot topic always, or it's not the politically charged topic or something like that. But it is an important one to also consider and look out for. And I want to make sure people are represented and considered. Yeah.
Right. So, well, this has been really great. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
I don't know. What else can I share? I mean, I could talk all day about all kinds of things. Jack of all trades over here. I don't know. I'm interested in a lot of things, not just art. I'm getting really into gardening. I'm co-authoring a book with my colleagues on effective peer review and critique. So I'm caught in all kinds of different places. So I don't not specifically just in the studio making art or teaching. I'm really interested in the practice of giving critique and feedback. So that's another area of focus I'm really interested in. And trying to do some scholarly work with my Leslie colleagues on that.
Oh, wow, that's great.
So we're going to be doing some presentations and conferences this summer, as well as trying to meet our deadline for the manuscript.
And how about your gardening? What kind of gardening do you do?
Oh, well, I love to cook, and that's where it all started. And I've always done a little gardening, but last year I really got into it. So I constructed a massive raised bed garden setup. And now I'm really looking forward to getting back to it this year.
Time? Oh, okay. All right, well, great. Well, thank you so much, Bill. This has been so enlightening. It's been great having you as my guest. And now I'd like to leave you with my inspirational, notable quotable. For today, I have 2 quotes, and they are both by Anonymous. And the first one is, "Before you can see the light, you have to deal with the darkness." And my second quote is, "Accept the person you are now to grow into the person you want to be." So thank you for viewing our show. Marquis, up. Stay positive. Oh, I was going to have Marquis say bye, but I forgot to tell you how you can view us. You can watch us on WCTV Sundays at 6 o'clock. on Comcast Channel 99, Verizon 39. You can see us on YouTube, where we are closed captioned for the deaf and hard of hearing. Look for, type in Access Abilities with no spaces. Look for the icon of the Statue of Liberty in the wheelchair. Click on that and you will see our episodes. And our latest venture is on Facebook. So you can go to facebook.com/Access Abilities 2020. You can also leave comments for us and tell us what you think of the show, or if there's anything that you would be interested in seeing. So until next time, stay positive. Marquis, up. Marquis, say bye. Say bye. Say bye.
No.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Dee
Thanks, Bill.
and Marquis.